I've heard that when Prince Charles was choosing his coronation vest, he asked for MSR red. All I know is I've got a box fresh Tindheim 2, and I'm going to show you all the details, every last little buckle, and then I'm going up on that hill there. I'm going to bite off more than I can chew and pitch it in some strong wind. Now this tent is quite an interesting departure for MSR. It's aimed firmly at the European market. In fact, for a long time it's not even been available in North America, much to their annoyance of the MSR fans over there. And I feel it's pitched squarely, pun intended, at models such as the Hilleberg Nammatj 2, and it looks very, very similar and has got a lot of similar features. But I'm going to delve into some of the good things and the bad things about the tent when comparing it to others that it's firmly set up against. And I must thank MSR for sending me this tent, but I'm going to give my unbiased opinion. So let's get it out of the bag. So firstly, the bag. This has got 2 buckles on it for compression and a drawstring. It's nicely made. It's got a big branded grab handle at one end, and MSR say it is 56 by 20 centimeters. I've just measured it and I absolutely agree with that. But if you were thinking of going ultralight and want to fit this in your 36-litre rucksack, all that's going to be left in there is a space for a mug and your ultralight bragging rights. Talking of pack size, their poles measure exactly 50 centimeters. So that's the whole length of that. So this is never going to go into a tiny package, but you could potentially squish that down into a nice boulder sized lump for putting at the bottom or top of your pack. Now the bag has a nice big protective flap, and we all love a good flap, with pitching instructions on the inside. Now, before we look at the components, let's talk about the uneasy subject of weight. Tent manufacturers do this minimum weight thing. The minimum weight of this tent is around 2.5 kilos. That means no pegs. If I take this tent up this hill with no pegs, we'll never see it again. So this tent weighs 3 kilos. I weighed all the components individually, and that is without the included footprint. Well done, MSR. I'm always having to fork out for a footprint. I always use one, so thank you for that. This weighs about 400 grams. The pegs weigh 200 grams. Even that doesn't really come down from the quoted weight of 3.2, which I made 3.3, doesn't come down to 2.48. So these take away the pack weight of 3.3 is not 800 grams. So this bag only weighs 50 grams, so where's the extra weight come from? This tent weighs 3 kilograms. That's it. Thank you. Here's the included footprint. These nice long tapes of them, well bar tacked and reinforced and taped seams. Incidentally, when you're using this footprint, I would recommend that you have the taping and PU coating up so it doesn't get abraded and warm from the ground. We have included 14 MSR groundhog pegs. Beautiful things these, and they've got more anodizing than a Porsche's wheel nuts, and 2 extra guy lines. All that little lot together weighs 200 grams, and the pegs individually weigh 13 grams. The length of each peg is 19 centimeters. I always think length is very important to give the right leverage and hold in soft ground. Now on with the tent. It's all polyurethane, the whole tent. including the fly here, which is a nice green colour, and these are all PU coated ripstop nylon. So it's easy to remember, they're all 68 denier. Now this is quite heavy material for a tent, and it's because the PU coating actually weakens the fabric a little bit, and so they'll need to make up for that by building it from a heavier material. But it feels quite nice and really good quality. But this is not your silky sil nylon tent that you probably want to wrap yourself up with naked, or not. Okay, good. I've got the tent clipped to my rucksack by one of the guy lines. I've got the footprint pegged out. I've got the poles ready, which are 7000 series aluminium, and the most accurately I can measure them, these poles are just under 9mm thick. Seems pretty beefy really. Again, beautiful smooth anodizing. You'd be quite happy with that on your control knob of the space shuttle. The guy lines are 3mm reflective, and with a really beefy clamp cleat, I'm sure that would be very useful to use with gloves on, and a reflective point for each guy line attachment point. The poles are going to go into these rivets that all looks very nicely done with great stitching there, and of course an adjuster at the bottom, clips to attach the inner to the outer, and this is the adjustment for the end of the tent. The material feels great actually. So it's going up to around 20 miles an hour at the moment. Not too bad, but that certainly feels like a fresh breeze. Great, so I've got all pegged out there, and what I've done is lengthen these, so as the tent goes up I can slacken off the end guys. I don't normally do this. I've pegged it out at the end as well, matching where the footprint is, so I've got lots of protection there ready to go. So I've done as much prep as I can really. Let's give it a try. This is where you'd put the extra guy lines on if you wanted to. Right, I'm pretty happy with that for a first pitch. The wind continues to blow up to 20, sometimes a little bit over, and it looks lovely. So that was fairly straightforward really. And it's the wind's coming from this 3/4, very similar conditions to when I pitched the Nor tent Vern 2 a couple of weeks ago. I seem to have run out of pegs, and I've still got one left there to do. I've got one spare one with me, so we'll pop that in there. Titanium nails, fantastic. Yeah, good, so it looks good. So let's do that first privileged part of going inside. As always, you first. That won't go any more tense than that. So here's the zip, Velcro flap over there. No jingly metal pullers, just a nice bit of 2mm line. And I noticed that there's a zip at the top as well, two-sided. And the door's not flapping open because there's a clip at the bottom there. Wow. Okay, you first, buddies. A single tie back for the door there. There's no elastic on that, but that seems to work, and that's all you need. Something important I feel of a tent of this nature is the space to get in when it's foul weather and kind of get ready. Take off your waterproofs your over trousers whilst under shelter. And for me, being 6'1" and 185 centimetres, I would say yes, there's space for that. It's a small space, but you know, I could definitely do it in ease. And then I would get in the inner tent, and my compatriot would then come in and do his business. But how it usually goes with me, it's always me outside finishing the tent off. That's my problem. Good. So branded here on the footprint. That's definitely nice and deep to not worry about splashes. I prefer it deeper for a 4-season tent, but the Tindheim is billed as a 3-season tent, and wow, look at that. I wish you could smell that smell. Oh, in you go, have a sniff. Lovely. Just polyurethane, just lovely. Wow, that's lovely in there. I can't help thinking that King Charles would have made his bedroom 4-poster canopy exactly the same colour scheme as this. Absolutely luxurious. So shoes off, let's get inside. Now MSR say that this inner tent is 230 centimetres long, and that's exactly why I've measured it, and they say it is 140 centimetres wide, and that is also exactly what I've measured it. The height of the inner is just there, exactly a metre. I'm not sure what their quoted size is. And the inner tent, the distance there is 116 centimetres. I'm making it, so that's definitely enough space and height to cook. Oh, dimensions wise, this is definitely a generous tent. There's absolutely loads of space, and that would be important for me because I've often got 2 people and the dog in a tent of this nature. So I'm going to put some mats in, and then we'll talk about some of the features. So this is with 2 standard Cedar Summit Ether Light mats in, with it pushed up against the top there. There's absolutely masses of space at the bottom, and there's a gap in between. And that's then pushed up against the walls, still plenty of space. So if I lie down there, even though the bottom of the tent, because I've got tailored to in, is being pushed in a little bit, there's still absolutely loads of space for my feet. And yeah, nice. As you can expect in a tunnel tent, it's a bit billowy, but what you could probably do is put some lines on here, attach them from there to there, and that would give you some retention of the inner and inside. Worth trying another time. So let's go over some of the features. So as I pointed out, there's a zip at the top of the inner as well, so we can do the door 2-way venting. There's a large vent here that's covered with quite a nice heavy mesh. Unfortunately, there's not a zippable flap on that, which would have been easy, but you could always aftermarket Velcro one onto there. Curiously, there's a little pocket on the inner there, so you could put your lighter in there, couldn't you, which you always lose. Just simple toggle points for the inner. All the stitching is beautifully finished, not a mark on it. And then door wise, let's try not to catch the dog's fur in the door. Door wise, there is a double door, so you can choose to have the door solid or completely mesh, and that would just roll back and tie up there, and that's the mesh door. Again, a nice heavy mesh. Let's just tie this door back. Got a decent sized pocket at the door end on each side, That's my wallet. And at the bottom, there's some really large pockets with a bit of stitching in between. And as you saw before, there is a hanging line, goes all the way, same material as the guy lines. And then here we have an adjustable vent. So that's mesh there. There's a nice breeze coming through there actually, because it's pretty warm in here. A decent gap between the inner and outer. Despite that 15-mile-an-hour breeze on the end of the tent, there's a gap maintained. So I'm really pleased to see that actually, because nobody likes to see that inner tent sticking to there, and that's definitely not happening, even with those kind of 20-mile-an-hour gusts there. Good stuff. So here's me doing the drink test. So this is me sat up on the mat. Plenty of space to drink there. It's even height all the way through, so you've got plenty of space to manoeuvre about and swivel and get changed. You've seen me with my 6'2", built like the proverbial son Josh. You know you need that rotation space. It's like being in here with a small bison. So I'm just going to have a coffee and sum up what my first impressions are with this tent. So at first I thought, it's just pitched as a Nammatj 2 copy, but it's not. MSR have really gone into being thoughtful about this tent, and the features that they've put in are superior to tents from many other manufacturers, and they've made it to an extremely keen price point. So the list price for this tent is £450, but I've seen it on a number of websites this morning for well under £400. And for a tent with this pedigree, with this backup and thoughtfulness, that represents an absolute bargain in my opinion. So the inevitable compromise is with the materials. So it's extremely well made and the materials are well chosen, but the polyurethane coating and material of the tent is to a price point. That doesn't mean that they don't feel and they aren't excellently put together, but it doesn't give the same weight for strength ratio as silicone coated nylon. That aside, it is absolutely superb, and there's benefits with that material as well, with the stretching properties of it. It doesn't so much. It does mean you've got to take extra care, as you should with all of your tents, to make sure that it's really thoroughly dried out after use, because there's an effect called hydrolysis that happens with PU coating, in that slowly moisture over time, even if it's stored dry, will start to affect the materials. But that you're talking kind of over a decade before that change starts to happen. But that can happen fast if you misuse a tent like this, as it can with any tent really. So I'd be really happy to use this in a typical British mountain environment with rain and sleet and wind. I think it would be a great, comfortable, robust space to be. And certainly on camps going forward, this is the tent that I will typically be using for my son and his friend on the mountain camps that we tend to do. Yeah, so all around, absolutely brilliant. So I'll look forward to seeing you next week. I'm in the Lake District and we'll be taking this tent on a mountain camp, and we'll see how it performs there. So time to get kind of drink my cup of coffee and get packed up. And I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. I'll put plenty more information in the description below, and some really interesting links to materials from another manufacturer who describe the properties much more eloquently than I have. So when I come to take this tent down, what I'm going to be doing is just starting to slacken off some of the guy lines a little bit to take enough tension out of it, so then I can release the poles, flatten the tent down, take the poles out, and then start to selectively unpeg it, starting downwind, with of course it still tied onto my rucksack up at the top there. So again, in reverse, nice and calm, working systematically upwind, getting the tent down whilst it's still pegged out, and then working into wind. I'm looking out here at the church in which we were married and where my children were christened. Lovely spot. There's a lovely old churchyard, and many of you know I'm a scout leader, and that there is the old hall that we meet in. And the old churchyard there, we play games with the scouts in the dark in the winter, and I have all these 10-year-olds running around these graves and old trees and stuff, and they absolutely love it once they get used to it.